Hi guys, I'm Mikelah of styleandvibes.com. We have a Caribbean American podcast as well as website where we share a lot of style. So Caribbean fashion, diaspora designers, moments, as well as vibes, which is mostly about music. I love music. I kind of grew up listening to reggae and dancehall as kind of part of my upbringing. And I've worked in the industry behind the scenes as a journalist, and kind of started Style and Vibes as a platform to kind of continue to grow and be a Caribbean operated program that, features our talent from our perspective.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Susanna. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
You guys
So,
are family.
yes. I'm honored to have you. So, Jamaican music is global. It's a global product. Music is such an important part of our culture, and even with the independence celebration that happened the other day, music was the main part of the service that went on, the program that went on. So one of the things that bothers me is like our artists usually are trying to appeal to an American audience, and and Jamaican music is bigger than just America. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of space to change and innovate. And I just wanted to hear from you what you think could be done by our industry, by the music industry, and by our artists to develop and innovate and change and move with the times.
I think it's really just looking at the different markets. So, and I think that that's kind of happening now, to be completely honest. A lot of the artists are looking regional, local, Caribbean wide, and then they're looking at Latin American markets, European markets, African markets. And at one time, it was just the US and kind of, and Europe for the most part. So I think with the success of reggaeton and kind of a lot of fusion is what is happening in Caribbean music right now. In dancehall in particular, you see a lot of collaborations with Afrobeats artists. You see, some collaborations from a hip hop side. You have the whole experience of trap hall, which is like the subgenre of dancehall, that is becoming popular, and then you have the influence itself is just really kind of going and reaching out. You have a Trinidad movement in Trinidad, which is basically like 90s dancehall. You know what I mean? It's just from a Trini perspective. So I think the impact is really forcing artists to look at their music and how they release it in these different markets and make songs for different markets. So Conscience really does a good job of making songs for specific markets. He releases soca music. He has like reggaeton infused songs. He collaborates with um, Afrobeats artists, I believe. I can't remember who off the top of my head, but I think more and more people are, and he dabbles a bit in the trap house sound. So I think that artists are really going to have to think like content creators. I think they're going to have to create similar how we create content for different social platforms. They're going to have to create content, their music being the number one content, for different markets. And I think you're going to see more of that coming in the future.
All right. So you mentioned Afrobeats and dancehall coming together, which I believe Afrobeats is largely dancehall inspired. So I would love to hear from you about what you think about the argument that's going around about um, Afrobeat being a threat to dancehall.
I don't think it's a threat, really and truly. I think realistically, there's a particular sound that is really amazing about 90s and early 2000 dancehall sound. And the artists aren't necessarily creating that volume that transgress that the international market is craving, right? So with the rise of a newer subgenres and this fusion that is happening, I think it created this opportunity for Afrobeats to kind of come in and stake its claim. And really and truly, we're all African people. So I remember listening to Wizkid Sounds from the Other Side, and I was just like, it just sounds like Africa is coming back for all of its diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
And because you heard reggaeton, you heard dancehall, you heard reggae, you heard hip hop, and it really just, to me, epitomizes Black music. And I think African artists are really honing in on that. And there's so many different subgenres in Africa. Afrobeats is just one of the genres. So I don't think that there is a huge gap, or I don't even really think that there's a big argument, because really and truly the artists are making music that they really and truly love. And if they felt it as a threat, then they would create that music. But they don't see it as a threat. They are enjoying it just as much as we are. So I think as consumers, we just have to kind of shift our ear. We like to argue about why this is and why this isn't. But at the same time, unless we're supporting the artists who are creating those traditional sounds, because last time I checked, Agent Sasco is still creating those sounds, Conscience is creating those sounds. You have people really releasing that sound, and it's not popping the way that it would before. But an Afrobeats artist similarly makes something similar, and look at Ding Dong. You know what I mean? Like, he is a prime example of one of the artists that are kind of taking the torch and carrying it to the next level, and people still love it. So it's not the volume of artists that you saw in the early 2000s and the 90s, and it's just changing. We have to adjust and evolve our ears and our sounds to newer sounds. And although the impact has gotten across the globe, we're still in the conversation, so we still have to assume the position of being in the conversation. So for me, the argument is kind of unnecessary, only because we're present. You can listen to the music and feel its presence. But I think, dancehall and reggae has gotten used to fight for something that, maybe it's not recognized that it's just inspired by. But I think the whole idea of credit is kind of a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yeah, that's a big conversation. Especially when it comes to America, right? Because I think a lot of the music here is inspired by it, and you hear it in the music a lot of times, and you see artists from Jamaica who come and they sue this artist or that artist because they use their music and didn't give them credit. And we have some of the most sampled music in the world, like Sister Nancy Bam Bam, Mata Bam Bam, that's like one of the most sampled songs in the world. And you mentioned in the 90s and 2000s, I feel like dancehall music had a place here during that time in America, at that time. And it completely changed over time. And I wonder why that is. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
I just think it's a loaded question, and it has a lot of different answers. I think, we grew up and the sound just changed, and we didn't change with the sound, quite frankly. So the popularity of that sound, the younger artists wanted to try something new. They wanted to do something a little bit different. And that's kind of what we're seeing and hearing and feeling. And that's why you see a lot of people who are a little bit older, like myself, in the same age range. They're shifting to just like, I'm not an artist, so I can't make music, and we can't force artists to create music that we want to hear. And when they do, we have to support it. So I think that the structure was, we don't even, what's the last rhythm that you actually remember? That rhythm culture is somewhat gone. You don't even know the different, they create them, but you don't remember the names of them. You know Diwali, you know the buzz rhythm, Showtime, those were, because you would listen beginning to end. So and the access for like we're releasing music even faster than when we did before. So artists have more access. There's just it's not that it's all over the place, but it's pocketed here. You'll hear a few sounds here and there, and I think for a long time we just got used to this particular formula, and that formula has since changed.
Hmm. That sounds like a conversation I had recently. And they were saying Jamaican creatives seem like they go by what they see works, and then when that doesn't work, then they don't evolve with it and change and to make it better. But they've seen people
Hmm.
abroad take what Jamaica has and make it better, and they make money from it.
Hmm.
Um, so I wanted to go back into innovation, right? And what are the ways that you think that the government in Jamaica, because we have a ministry in music and culture and music, culture, entertainment, I believe, and I'm wondering what ways do you think that they could help to develop the industry for artists on a more global platform?
I was having this conversation on Twitter, and it wasn't really a
Hmm.
conversation. I commented on something that somebody posted, and they were saying that the ministry should come up with a program for artists to learn more about the business. And I thought
Hmm.
that that was really interesting, because I don't think, here we don't rely on government to create programs like that.
Hmm.
But I think for Jamaica, it would be unique only because, and it would be a good thing. So the music is an export. So if it's an export that is valued and should be valued and treated as it is valued, then maybe the government does have a place to create workshops and programs around understanding the business of music. There are a lot of complaints in the industry around artists not having that business savvy. There's some that do, but there are a lot more who don't. And when you're doing business internationally, and I just mean outside of the Caribbean region, the CARICOM region, understanding how the music industry from a business side works is important. So there's a reason why, like, what does it take? What kind of legalities do you have to go through to get a visa? What type of marketing and promotion should you be doing? What type of etiquette is the media, that in those different markets? Is it different? How is it different? Um, a lot of our artists, A&R is gone. Most people don't really work and develop artists. So that was the role of an A&R representative at a label. But now there is just too much that most labels don't take that on. They want you already packaged. So if you're already packaged, you still have to come with something to the table. So understanding what a label and international distribution label deal looks like, what does that mean for you? Understanding those basics, I think it's not super innovative, but I think it's innovative to the space, and it sends a sign that Jamaica really is intentional about the export and the value of music and its relation to culture and how it impacts the island.
Hmm. So I know you do marketing as a professional, and it might be linked into things that you don't necessarily do, but you do music, you have a podcast about music and style
Mm-hmm.
and Jamaican music particularly, and you're a marketing professional. So I've seen and heard conversations around how dancehall artists, particularly dancehall artists, I think, don't market themselves well. And that is one of the things that are lacking in the business. So I would love to hear from you. What do you think are some of the ways they might be not marketing themselves as how maybe like an Afrobeats artist is marketing themselves now?
I don't think that they're not doing a good job. Um, so again, I don't want to compare the markets only because I think Africa has a well built in network. They have more people. They actually, their diaspora is triple the size of ours, if not more. Um, but I think unique to, I don't necessarily think they understand marketing. They don't I don't think that they necessarily have the resources or a team to kind of push the envelope in terms of what they're doing. So I would advise more artists to really look at their analytics, look at, and I think it's such a nerdy thing to say, but there's value in the data of who, now you know who's listening. I mean, there was one times where you had to wait for charts, and charts were like, not, are you sure that this is the right chart? Is it like, outside of like a Billboard chart, which reggae is like this much, now you literally have the data. You know how many people are following you on Instagram. You know how many people are streaming your music on each different platform. You know what country, you know where they're going, how long they listen, how many minutes they listen. So don't just use the promotion of those platforms, use the actual platforms to work for you. So how many plays do you get in, Pandora versus Spotify? Should you be taking out ads or listing try to get your songs listed on specific playlists in order to push you? And whether the artist does it or the manager does it, then you can kind of create a marketing plan around the idea of pushing music or just your brand. If you're on social, like, what is your social strategy? Like, what are you sharing? Like, I think there are some really good examples. Like for me, Shensia does an amazing job at social. Spice does an amazing job on every platform. I think the women are really taking it and using it to their advantage. Taking the screenshots, reaching out to and people that really share the content that when they do get featured. Like there are a lot of artists where I've conducted interviews where I create the actual asset for you to share and they don't share it. So it's those kinds of simple things that can keep your buzz going, that it seems small, but it actually takes a good deal of insight and looking at the data per se to really understand. I think the artists really have to wrap their minds around the music business. They got the music part in terms of the creativity, but the business part is actually 90%, if not more, of what you do to push your music. And really, are they making as much money off of the music? I mean, before all of this COVID stuff, performances and merchandise and doing meet and greets, and those are revenue streams for an artist. Brand ambassadorships, are they looking at those types of things to kind of grow their brand and continue to grow their brand? And I think a lot of people are very, I just want to do music, I just want to go to the studio, I just want to release, and that's not enough. It's not enough anymore. So they just have to wrap their heads around that type of marketing, and it takes a lot of work. And it's not to say that they're good at it, but this is what has to be done in order for the continued value to be where it needs to be, or where it should be, or where you think you should be. Because really and truly, there's no shortage of talent. There's a huge shortage of work ethic.
Thank you. So my last question, I'm going to a current event because I found it through you. I didn't really know what was going on yesterday, but Billboard released that front page cover of their magazine, and they conveniently left out the two Jamaican artists who had the most views and made Verzuz like it right now. And I wanted to know, is this something that you would, because we talked about credit earlier, is this like an echo of what we've been saying for a long time about Jamaican artists not being respected or supported or viewed as respectable in the music industry at large?
Yes. Full stop. Yes. I think, you know, the part that is, you know, disheartening is that particular, regardless of the numbers, that particular Verzuz was the first international act, the first time they had two artists in one room, the first and last time you've ever seen that type of energy in a room holistically. That was a virtual experience, and everyone wants to replicate that experience. It's not hard to put on a virtual concert, but to have that kind of, whether you're performing, you should be able to perform like that, whether you're performing for 5 people or 500,000. But that really is a testament to the platform. And for me, not only does it pay, it should have paid homage to the individuals. It's a symbol for the business of influence, right? We're constantly talking about Black people getting credit when they should be, and there are multiple opportunities to give credit. You pay people, you shout them out, or make sure that they are included in platforms where they should be. And that was one of them. For me, hip hop spawned from dancehall, from reggae. You wouldn't have the DJ and the turntable if Kool Herc wasn't of Jamaican descent, bringing his knowledge of what Jamaicans did in the 70s to the Bronx. So that's the full circle picture, and it's that type of, it was the opportunity to really be inclusive, because that particular one changed the way that people saw Verzuz. It changed the way marketers looked at their platform as an opportunity as well. And it spawned a different type of energy. So I think it was only right to, I don't think it was inadvertent. I think it was, well, no one knows who they are anyway. So, you know, and it's just Jamaica. But when you're looking for the vibes and you're looking for, you know, that type of energy, you have no problem for come sit on the ends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, our slang is riddled throughout, you know, years. It should be more of a mutual respect there. And it's more than just saying, I recognize you. It's about being included in the story. And I think that that's the problem that most people have with the cover itself. And it really, essentially, you know, Beenie Man and Bounty Killer are legends in their own right. Like, you wouldn't have done that to Mark Anthony, would you? I mean, if you want to compare catalogs between markets, you know, that wouldn't have been, if it were Bad Bunny, you would have put him on the cut. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's important to recognize and understand. And I love Mark Anthony, I love Bad Bunny, but I'm just creating that. The reason why people were so upset is because and you can say whatever you want about dancehall as an industry, as a business, but you did a story about how Verzuz influenced the difference in entertainment of the quarantine, and conveniently left out the catalyst that changed part of their entire story. So when people, you cannot talk about Verzuz and not, I don't care who you are, and not mention Beenie Man and Bone Tequila. That particular one, hands down, they haven't been able to replicate that energy since. They've put two people in a room, but that energy is not the same as, and I think previously, I think, you know, Jill, and not only that, okay, we're looking at the numbers. That was one of the most highest rated. You know, they had one of the, I think right underneath Jill Scott and Erykah Badu, they had the most increase in streams as well. So the numbers are there to kind of tell the story. They just had to include, and not including them visually is an important part, because, you know, there are other parts in history where people are left out visually, and people, like, we all know people don't always read everything. And if they were that small and you believed as an editor that they weren't that, then what was the issue in putting them in? You can't put in Verzuz, type Verzuz into Google. You will see Beenie Man and Bone Tequila. You mean to tell me you didn't Google to see all of the different artists who were there that we could choose from? I don't think that was, you know, I'm not buying that it was inadvertently left out. And at least if you feature one or the other, like, I don't know, it was just, we were all upset. We were all upset. Very upset. How a good Independence weekend.
Exactly, right. Them bright and otada. But I feel like it definitely is something that deserves more conversation, because we see it in how they represent us in every way. Like even in movies and TV shows, we're always like caricatures or whatever. So anyways, before I go into a whole thing, thank you, Mikelah. I really appreciate it. This was great having a conversation with you about music, which is something I really love, and can't wait to hear more from you again.
Thank you so much.